You ready?
There is a connection between the paranormal, UFOs, and the myths of ancient history. The clues are scattered across the landscape from a forbidden past, maybe even in your own backyard. There is a connection between the true nature of our reality, consciousness, and the unexplained. I'm Carl the Crusher. Let's explore the unknown. Welcome back to the Carl the Crusher channel. I've got a really cool show for you. It's really part 2 of the last video that we just did, Top 10 Secrets of the Curse of the Skinwalker, or at least the origins, possibly, of the name Skinwalker and where it came from with the connection to the Mormon Church, Brigham Young, and Chief Wakara, who was named Chief Wakara. If you missed that video, here's a highlight. Now you have this pattern where you've got Chief Wakara, who's being known by the white Mormons up in the Salt Lake Valley in the Uinta Basin as Walker, or Chief Walker. And what Chief Walker could have been doing is wearing animal skins or having his men dress with coyote pelts or wolf pelts to hide their identity, to go to these slave trade meetings, or actually to go hide down in New Mexico and along the edges of Lake Powell in order to actually snatch up kids. And so you've got this legend of this dog man, a wolf man, someone that shapeshifts from a person into a wolf. And you've got Chief Wakara, who's also nicknamed by Brigham Young, because he can't say the name right, as Chief Walker. And they're wearing wolf skins like a dog man that shapeshifts to hide their identity. And they're creeping up through the dark canyons and actually kidnapping the Navajo women and children at night, and then taking them back up to sell to Brigham Young. I actually made a mistake in the last video where I used this photograph thinking that this was actually a depiction of Navajo skinwalkers, but they are actually the Yebiche. These are not skinwalkers whatsoever. So when you watch that last video, know that when you see that video or that image pop up in 2 locations, that I actually made a mistake there, and there's a correction of what the Yebiche actually are, and it's a really beautiful origin story. And so I wanted to correct that down in the description below. And the individual that really helped catch that and correct that for me is Colleen Gorman, and she is running the Re-Indigenizing Minds project with her friend Roger Colty, and they are of the Dene and the Navajo tribe in New Mexico. And they've been helping me understand a lot of the mysteries of the ancient petroglyphs that I have been exploring in these ancient canyons, how it ties in to an ancient indigenous mapping system that follows along with ley lines, the electromagnetic field of the earth. And also we talk a lot about basically part 2 of the secret origins of the name Skinwalker and some of those Navajo legends that people really don't know. So we're going to get into the deep origins of the mystery of the Skinwalker, and some of those things that people really don't want to talk about. Really quick before we get into the full-fledged interview, I want to thank our partners, Mount Wilson Ranch in Pioche, Nevada, the predecessor to Skinwalker Ranch. If you don't know anything about Mount Wilson Ranch, make sure and go check out the website. The link is down in the description below, and also all the other documentary series that I have about that place, because a lot of this mapping system that we're talking about with Roger and Colleen today in the interview actually falls in line with some of the artifacts and things that we're finding there at Mount Wilson Ranch and even Skinwalker Ranch. So it's something to pay attention to and to keep track of along the way, as well as my other partners, ReadyToRides.com. They're a UTV touring company here in southern Utah, Arizona, where they actually can take you on UTV tours across the sand dunes and up around the Grand Canyon into Arizona and near Zion National Park and other awesome locations that you normally can't get access to. And not only that, you can request, especially at Mount Wilson Ranch and with Ready to Rides, to even request to have me come and go on guided tours with you guys. There's even a Water Canyon Winery and Resort. It's a local vineyard near where I live, where you can come and stay, as well as staying in the lodging at Mount Wilson. So make sure and check out all the links. Without any more waiting, let's get right to the show. but I've been working with my friends Roger Culty and Colleen Gorman on this amazing project. They've been watching my YouTube videos where I've been going and exploring ancient petroglyph sites and different indigenous locations and trying to help restore some of the lost mysteries of some of these locations and how we can reconnect with them and heal and drop our different cultural boundaries as we do that, and as well talk about maybe Mount Wilson and Skinwalker Ranch and other things. But Roger and Colleen, I'm so excited to have you guys on the show, and I could do a whole show just talking about you guys, but I want to let you guys tell your own story first. So
First
welcome,
time
you
on
guys.
here.
First time.
Very
So
happy to be on.
definitely. So Colleen, I actually kind of want to start with you because you've got a whole website called the Re-Indigenizing Minds Project, and I want to hear kind of your story a little bit, and then how you met Roger, and now, yeah, and hear all of that so that we can introduce everybody to you guys.
Okay. Hello, Yate. My name's Colleen Gorman. I am Dene, Navajo. Nandish Ejet Kachitni is my clan, the Zuni Red Running into the Charcoal Streak Water Clan. And Bigbatwodni Twittich Eatni Bashishim, the Deer Springs Bitter Water Clan is I'm born to that. And Kintachitni Dashiche, Do, the Besijin Dashinale. The Red House people are my maternal grandparents, and the Black Sheep are my, I'm sorry, my paternal grandparents. Kintachitni, the Red House are my maternal grandparents. So Chinle Nasha, I'm from Chinle, Arizona, and grew up on the Navajo reservation. Went to boarding school at age of 4 through like age 10, and then again in high school. And I met Roger in college at the University of New Mexico, and I started learning from him about the sacred calendars of the Americas, the 268 calendar, the year count calendar. And I just have been a student for basically 20 years, because in 2002 is when I met Roger.
Yeah. For the first year, I was Robert Cooley. And then a year later, I finally told her my real name. But I had to embarrass her for a whole year before I would say anything. Her and another guy, another Navajo that did that to me. And he got mad at me.
So you had a
whole name for a whole year? Why didn't you say anything? Because I like to look stupid. Everybody knows who I am.
You were calling him by the wrong last name for a while.
Yeah. And
I did a big gig at UNM at the Student Union, and I was going to have this big show, and she runs to me and said, I just came to UNM, got a poster, I'm going to get all these people to come to your, when you play, and I went, really? Let me see the poster. Robert Cooley. Nobody showed up. Nobody knew who I was. I got a free Indian taco out of it because they felt sorry for me. But nobody showed up for my gig at the whole student union at UNM. And nobody knows Robert Cooley.
Yeah, I had the wrong name down.
So I kind of wasted the whole gig on that one. Even though everybody knew who I was, except her.
That's so funny. So you met him there at the university.
Yes, I met him at the University of New Mexico.
We're both graduates of the University of New Mexico. We
Gotcha.
actually went to the grueling program. I did the art studio degree, and I did a lot of art history. And believe it or not, the knowledge that I've been showing you, I was presenting to the professors over there. But rather than accept what I was having to show them, they just graduated me early and got me out of the classes.
Really?
Really, what
they
happened?
Just were like, move along.
And then later, with this guy that I was talking to, David Stewart from the anthropology department, he heads the whole thing. He retired, and I met him at Manny's one time, and he retired and goes, you know what, Raj, what? I couldn't do anything because my retirement was at stake. And so what are you talking about? I can't say anything that'll take my retirement away, but now I got the retirement. They can't take nothing away. I can now tell you that everything you told me was true. Everything you presented was real. Everything you presented was what it was. And now I can tell you, it is what you showed me. And then I said, so what's your critique on this whole thing? We should do what they do in Mexico, we should do to these guys at UNM that do this. And I said, what's that? In Mexico, they get and they put them up on a line and they fire them. And I went, "Steward!" And then, that's how you really are. I said, yeah, I had to behave to get my retirement, but I'm exactly like you. But I can't say that they were going to take my retirement away, and I couldn't say you were right
Yeah.
over that. That's when I realized, oh, there's something in the academic world, because Flora Clancy, who was my Maya instructor, was going through her whole thing since she was 20, and she was getting ready to retire after 50 years of being in there. And I caught her in her office, and her head was on the desk, and she was like in a bad. And I said, what's the matter? And said, I'm retiring next month. And I said, what's bad about that? I started this when I was 20 to understand the Maya glyphs, and I'm ready to retire 52 years later, and I'm not anywhere closer to understanding it than when I started when I was 20. I said,
Yeah.
you got 1 month before you retire, right? Yes. Make me an appointment for 2 weeks to come see you for an hour or hour and a half. Really? Why? I'm going to show you something. And a week and a half later, I went in there for my appointment. I showed her all of my art deciphered in the crystal ball holographic. She could see it in 3D. She got to see what she's been trying to look for 50 years. And
Yeah.
one day I was going out in the hallway. I had one of my paintings on the wall that had the ancient decipherments on there. And I found my instructor standing there looking at it like she was all dreamy, staring at it, because she finally understood what it was about. And then 2 weeks later, she retired. She's the head Maya expert in the whole world. And she didn't understand any of the glyphs.
And a lot of this, you guys, is going to go over so many people's heads. And I really wanted to just let you guys talk for a minute to tease it out there at the beginning of this interview, because uh, what we're discussing here is an indigenous mapping system that may overlay with several different known historical sites and even pyramid locations and significant locations, and also unknown spots that haven't even been discovered yet that may all connect even with the electromagnetic field and the ley lines of the earth, ancient petroglyphs, and a lot of fascinating things. And we're going to get into a ton of that, of how you guys have, how Roger has figured all of this out, and how Colleen is actually helping put this together into a book and into workshops and other things to where other people can learn this as part of the Re-Indigenizing Minds project. So I just wanted to
Uh,
encapsulate that really quick before we jump too
Truthfully,
far into it.
I'm giving credit for really what my great great grandfather, Charles Calty, who was the classic, who was doing this work before me. I mean, I'm honored that you're feeling that way toward me, but I feel like I'm just picking up where my great great grandfather left off. He was the real brains. He figured it out way before I was even born.
And maybe you can introduce yourself, Roger.
Oh, yeah, my name's Roger Calty. See my name right there? It's right there. That's
Yes.
me.
Now
Roger's
I'm
from
gonna
the
share. I'm
Kimball.
gonna share on
That's my great
screen
great
here.
grandfather.
Is that Charles? Is that your ancestor?
Yes, and he's one of the few people that still have the flattened, forehead that everybody's having holy cows about. They're acting like it's thousands of years old, and I'm going, wait a minute, I got a picture of my grandfather with that. I mean, come on, let's get real here. It
Oh
wasn't too
wow.
long ago when things were really known. You know what that means when they have a forehead that's like that? They are
No,
the
I don't.
carriers of the sacred knowledge in Maya, as well as in my neck of the woods. You only have that if you know the ancient knowledge. That's the
Wow.
sign that you know. Nobody knows that because they're not me and they're not part of my cultural background, but I do. There's specific people that are inherited with this knowledge, and then they're given this forehead because not only are they the members of the ancient knowledge, it's also the signature of the leadership of the tribe. So nobody could be an imposter or pretend that they're you unless they got a flattened head. You get it?
Yeah, that's not something you could fake,
You're
right? You
lying.
can. That
A
makes sense.
flathead is a ruling class, and you don't have that. You're lying. That was the other reason, was to differentiate the ruling class, from the normal I don't know if you noticed, they did that to my head slightly because they didn't want me to be like in a freak show. I do have the flattened head, but they only did it slightly because they didn't want me to be a freak in modern society. So I do have it slightly. They just didn't do it as bad as my great great grandfather. So they did do it to me, but just enough that only they would know, and that I wouldn't get, made fun of in the white man's school when I went, to grade school. And why'd your head that like that? And and they're calling you pinhead and all these stupid kid names. So they didn't want that to happen to me. So they just slightly did it. Just
Interesting.
enough. But nobody knows. I never even told her that.
I
Well,
had no
nobody needs.
idea.
Nobody does. Because I'm going to be honest with you. The main reason nobody knows about Native people because non-natives are too busy talking to other Indian experts that are not Native, to other Indian experts that are not Native, but they're not talking to natives themselves.
Yeah,
That's the problem. And
there's a
you get all
fear there. People are afraid they're going to get chastised or ashamed or called out or something as being racist or something, and that hasn't been my experience at all when I've come for help and been willing to change my mind when I'm wrong.
you know how bad it feels that your ancient ancestors did all of this work in Teotihuacan and Chaco, and then some idiot comes along and gives all the credit to a stupid alien. How does that
Right.
feel to people that really, I mean, my low esteem value is because of that. Like my people comment, oh, you didn't, you couldn't invent the wheel, the aliens did it.
Yeah.
Hmm. The Skinwalker media hype over there. If you would have asked Native people, tell you exactly what you just found out, like I was kind of leading you in that direction the whole time. Like I was like, we need to resolve it between non-natives and natives because we both were guilty of perverting the original teachings. Both
Right.
sides, not just white people, natives too.
Yeah, this idea that these impossible structures and features and carvings were all done by aliens or extraterrestrials, but then the stuff that they do give credit to the native indigenous people, they say it was primitive. Oh, that was all
Yeah.
done. That's all primitive. And it's
Oh,
like, how
discrimination.
can you say that when they're both side by side and culturally and everything were done by the same people or same
Or
inheritance?
the Phoenicians came over, the Egyptians did it for us, and we were just the laborer.
It's or yeah, and it couldn't have been the other way around where people were migrating and traveling in both directions, and so it could have been going both ways. But there's always this suppression of one and the uplifting of another in this class system that's causing a whole rift. And I if we can really quick just jump back because we were talking about your grandfather and that inheritance and all that. I really would love Roger, for you to tell the story of your childhood and upbringing and how you were brought up as an elder and what you know.
Okay, well, let's kind of start at the beginning. My great great grandfather, people, they came out of Thunderbird's nest. They were the first eggs that were rolled out by a giant woman that rolled us out of the nest, and we were the first egg that cracked. We were the first people that were ever created. My father's side of the family descended from salmon that came out of Lake Quinault, which is up our river, which is where we get our best salmon from. My mother's side of the family are with the Quileute and the Lapush. And you know the Twilight series where they turn into wolves and all of that? That's my mom's family. They descend from the wolves, but we're not the media Hollywood hype of it. It's where, part of our cultural origin story is that my mom's side of the family descended from wolves and became humans. And that's really the basic background of where I was at as my cultural background. As a child, this is where it gets weird. Nobody told me anything about my cultural background. I had to do that as I went along in my research. I had aunts and all that. Do you think he knows yet? Do you think he knows yet? And I go, well, what do I know? What yet? And they would never tell me. I had to find out way later. But um, down the road, I have a sister named Stephanie Colty, a younger sister. But we ended up being a product of what you were covering on their last show, the adoption policy. For the longest time, they were after me and my sister, and we kept going between families and relatives, like house to house to escape them. But one day, my grandmother was babysitting us while my mom was at work, and then the state adoption people showed up, and I was given the warning to go out the back door and run. which I did with my dog, and my dog kept them at bay till I got away. But my poor little sister, she wasn't able to even crawl, let alone walk. And the state came in and adopted her out to a non-native family. It took us 18 years to find her. That's the truth of growing up being native. This noble red man nonsense, it's more like a traumatic red man. Because what we've gone through has been so much traumatization going on that I don't think the non-natives understand that it's just layered and layered and layered and layered and layered. This trauma, cultural trauma. Then they wonder, oh, that drunk Indian. That's the reason why they're a drunk Indian. Oh, they're on drugs. That's the reason they're on drugs. Oh, they're all going to prison. That's why they're going to prison, because of the cultural trauma. We've been led to believe not to look in the mirror and to be happy with who we see. We've been led to believe to look in the mirror and to be ashamed of who we are and what we represent and even our own culture. And then we're supposed to put all of that aside to become, what did you call that? White. And what did you say that term was?
White and delightsome people is what the Mormons
Yeah.
wanted
We had to give
natives to
all that
become.
up to become white and delightsome people. We had to give all that up. In my world, in order to become white, I had to give up everything that meant to be native. But if I wanted to be native, in reality, I have to give everything up that it was to be white. I went this way. I get in trouble for it because I decided
Yes,
to go
because
native.
in the last video I was talking about the maybe the origins of the legend of the Skinwalker, of the dog man that would come and kidnap kids in the dark, and revealed that those were actually kids that were taken from the Navajo Nation up to Brigham Young and sold to the Mormons, and they were uh, under the impression that this was giving them a better life or adopting them into Christianity to make them white and delightsome from this like orphanage, like abandoned, living out in the wild, savage uh, lifestyle that the Indians were living. That was the mindset at the time, which really
Kill
was
the
only
Indian to save the person is what the policy is. Kill the Indian to save the person. That's what is the problem.
right. And out of Brigham Young's own words in the Journal of Discourses, we discussed that in that last video, was how his idea was that even when they were punished or anything like that through the slave trade, that it was chastising you guys and teaching you a lesson of humility until you would basically bow down and become Mormon or become Christian. And I'm not trying to say
You're,
anything bad, because there was, like you said at the beginning, everybody was involved in things trying to survive at that time. It was a harsh time.
even by that definition, that means the Washington State Adoption Agency are skinwalkers too, then, by your definition.
Right. So they were, I mean,
They
they
did
were trying to
everything
come
that
and
Chief Walker did. It's just in the 20th century, that's all. Did you
right.
know they were adopting kids all the way up into the late 60s and then they finally stopped it? It was
Yeah,
recent. It's not a
the
long time
the
ago.
the adoption program that was going on in the church, it was in the church publications and talked about in 1978 when I was born
That's
even.
yeah, that's the time when they finally quit adopting Indians out and were able to keep them within the tribe. But till 78, we had no voice, we had no choice, just tear the family apart.
So ICWA, the Indian Child Welfare Act, was passed in the 70s as well. And that was finally a measure of protection so that tribes could place Native children either with their own Native families or within a
The tribe.
tribe, or at the very least with Native families. And so there's been a recent attack on that.
They're trying to rescind it.
So it's actually being reviewed by the Supreme Court, and
They're trying to do it again.
the people who are trying to lead the attack are actually in league with like the gas, oil industry, like the mineral industry, because it's an attack on sovereignty. If they can
Get to the resources.
it's about the resources. So if they can break down the strength of native sovereignty in the United States, and our right to even like place our own children with our own peoples, then they can try and get to the resources.
The states are our worst enemy right now, and yet we have more rights than states by legal law. There's the United States, and then there's treaties, and then there's state law. But it's ass backwards right now, and the states really think they're over tribes. But if you go to a court of law, they'll tell you that treaties come way ahead of state law. But nobody
Right.
wants to honor that.
So they have to infiltrate through like a version of like genetic cleansing and reindoctrination and kind of infiltrating through corruption and rewriting your entire history and heritage in order to uh, water everything down so they can just move in and put in a pipeline or go mine in the
Well,
mountains or do
I'll
whatever
put
they
it
do.
simple. They put the ass in assimilation.
Yeah.
so so the whitewashing of history is actually not unique. So New England was called New England so that way it could, if they had a could establish that it was new and there was nothing there before, then that's how they could sanitize history and make like nobody ever existed there before. That's why it was
That
New
explains New
England.
Mexico.
But it all,
Right.
and it also explains even, I think in Russia, right now when they capture people, the Ukrainians, they're now forcing them to say or admit that they're crazy, because they're trying, to say they're Ukrainian, and if they don't admit that they're crazy, then they're automatically killed. So they in Russia they actually completely took out of Crimea all indigenous peoples and completely moved them out, and so they're it's just the same policy of colonization. Take them out, call it new, and then you can say when history began, and you can rewrite history and sanitize it.
Meanwhile, at the other end of Russia, I'm talking with the native Siberians, and they're beginning to get on my side, and I ask them, how could you put up with this Nordic torture, either from the American or the Russian side? How well the Nordic, they got on me about the Americans, and our relationship. So I brought it up with them. So well did the Russians treat you native Siberians? And they got quiet. They have the same story as we do. And I said, what are you going along with these Nordic types? There's Siberia. You know what Siberia is?
I don't.
Well,
Siberia
kind of,
isn't just
yeah.
people think it's a little tiny state in Russia.
Oh
No.
no, huge.
It takes up about 2/3 of Russia. 2/3 of Russia is brown like me.
I know. I was
The other
thinking of
side,
the. I was even
but
thinking of the ancient connection of the is it the Ainu that came over when it was all frozen and came down? I mean, they found settlements up in northern Idaho that go back like
we, we got a
16,000,
term
18.
for it. It's called the Ural Dene. The Ural
Oh,
Dene. In other words, from the Ural Mountains all the way to her, we speak the same dialect.
Dene.
Dene. That's
educate
what.
me on the use of Dene versus Navajo and how that gets used, interchanged, and things, and help everybody know how that works.
Navajo was just a term created by conquistadors, and Dene is our name that we call ourselves. Dene means the people, and so there are Dene up in Canada as
Slave Lake.
well. Yep, and they also have clans. So I introduced my
They're on that
clan.
alignment that comes straight here. From Slave Lake to
Right.
here.
They have the same place names for things. They have clans. Their clans are slightly different, where they have like bear, wolf, things of that nature for their clan. Down here, because we've integrated with the Pueblo, I say Nanish Eje, that means Zuni. Nanish Eje Tkachitni. So that's my clan. And so that's because my great, 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 great grandmother, she was a part of she had a sister, and so there was a war, and so they were Zuni from the White Corn clan, and so when the war happened, one sister went back to the Zuni and one stayed with her Navajo relatives, and when she came of age and had her puberty ceremony, she took on the clans of her family that she was raised with, which was Tkachitni. So that's the story, so but all the different Navajo clans are basically also talk about that interrelationship that we have with the Pueblos of the South here. So if you're Ma'idesh Gijni clan, which is the Coyote Pass people, that's actually the Jemez people. Even Na Kaitene is the people who are just walking around, because when the conquistadors came, what did? They were just walking around. So we call them Na Kaitene. And so people who say that, they're Hispanic. They have a Chicano Hispanic background.
And Navajo, and I'm not pronouncing it wrong, is the Anasazi word for farmers of the arroyo. But
Is
nobody,
it supposed to be Navajo, not Navajo?
pronounce however the Pueblos would say it. And it's really meant
Oh,
the farmers of the arroyo. And then the
oh.
Tower clan that's within the Navajo Nation, that Tower clan, in my research, I found out that that clan is associated with the towers that are over up at Hobenweep. That's one of the trademark boundaries. And they have a Tower clan. And I'm going, and I even told Colleen, I think that Tower clan is connected to those towers in Hobenweep.
It sounds
And
very similar.
And a lot of our language terms, for example, Anasazi, people mostly say, but it's Anasazi. So Nehisazi is our ancestors, forefathers. Ana is alongside, but also enemy. So Anasazi. So it could be translated a couple different ways, either as the enemy who lived alongside our forefathers.
You know why they were called the enemy, Carl? This
Why
is
is
going to
that?
blow your mind. When they came down, they got mixed up with this Anasazi leader named the Gambler. And when they got mixed up with the Gambler, I guess he knew the game really well, that he knew how to cheat at it. And all of the Dene lost. And when they lost their freedom. When they lost their freedom, now you're my slave. Now build Chaco. Make sense?
Really? So he was actually playing gambling games with them and conning everybody.
And I think that's why they came with the enemy tied to it, because they were being forcibly taken into forced labor because they lost the gambling game
Wow.
and they lost their
Rod,
freedom.
that's
So that
amazing.
word is actually also tied
Slavery
into,
goes through a lot of this whole area,
right.
let alone my area of the
Well,
woods.
that word is also even tied into our food. So if you think about corn in Navajo, the word is na-da. A na is part of it, the food of the enemy, na-da.
Hmm.
Na-osle, just different words, beans and so on and so forth.
See, the Dene originally came down here. They were working within the system here. But there came a certain point when they realized they weren't being accepted. They used to even live in stone buildings. That's why they have the Tower Clan. But after a certain point, they realized they weren't being treated right, and they said, "Heck with that!" And they went to building what they used to build up north. They start building hogans. They start doing their own things, and said, "Heck with what you're doing. You're not respecting us. We're taking back our culture. You can have your stone buildings. We're going to take our hogan back." And
Oh,
then because of, like I said, them being forced into this forced labor is the reason they earn that part of the enemy in that. It's not that they were raiding them. They originally were working within the system to trade. But because
right.
they got screwed over so many times that they finally got fed up with it. Then after a certain point, they said, well, heck with that. We'll just join the Apaches and we'll just raid you.
Right.
And
This kind of,
The Apache, they are Diné as well.
We're the
So
same people.
their language is a cousin to us. They're Athabascan speaking.
They're
oh,
Euro Dene too.
interesting.
With the
So,
because they're used to talking to Uto-Aztecan, they're used to talking to Pueblos, Mayas, but they forget there's a second group in the United States called the Athabascan speaking people, the Northwest Coast, the Inuits, the Apaches, the Navajos, that nobody thinks about. Even our own native brothers think that we don't know anything, which is a big mistake because we know everything they forgot
right.
and more.
Right. And everything that's been stolen too. And like what you were saying, I want to jump back to that story, Roger, because we had to do kind of a historical roundabout to bring everybody up to speed as to why you were told to run out your back door for your life because there was people. Where were you and who was coming to try and take you? And you said they did get your sister.
Well, like I said, way before 1978, they had a policy that was to adopt every native child they could find and get them to non-natives. A lot of the times they didn't end up in, loving non-native families. A lot of times they were just adopted out to become farmhands at the local farm. And there was no love or family involved, just work. Free labor.
Where did your sister go? When she got
Ended up with a Polish family for 18 years, and it was just by accident that my dad's license was going by, and she worked in the state office for the highway department, and his license was going by, and she recognized I don't know how, being as young as she did, she knew that was his name and that was him, and found the address and went and talked to him, and we reconnected just by chance because that was going by where she was working.
Wow.
I was adopted out 18 years ago, and I think you're my father, blah, 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 blah. And then he goes, "You're Stephanie. We lost you 18 years ago. She found us. But if it wasn't for that, she would have been lost forever." And that's normal for all families. I don't want people feeling sorry just for me. Feel sorry for all of those poor other Native children besides me that this happened to.
And I think I want to take a moment too to call awareness to the huge issue and problem that's still going on today of all the missing women and children off of reservation lands. If you guys want to take a moment to talk about that and maybe how people can become aware of that, that might be a good time.
10,028 Native children have been discovered in unmarked graves at boarding schools who probably died a horrible death. And my worst complaint is that last summer, this white lady was gone and disappeared. And then they finally found her body, and her boyfriend got charged. And the whole world was in an uproar about this lady, this white lady that was missing. And the whole world was looking for her. While at the same time, 10,028 Native children were being discovered in unmarked graves that no one even noticed or cared about. What's the matter with you Americans out there? Are you zombies? Do you have a heart? Or do you even have a soul?
Yeah, it's
Children!
totally
Children!
selective, coming and
We're
basically
thinking
just
children!
this
I think
pattern of kidnapping kids and calling it adoption and
It's still going on, Carl. It hasn't stopped.
there's also
I hate to get
the
angry, but it gets me
immigration
upset.
system. If you look at the children that have gone through that, and you have 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds representing themselves legally in the immigration system.
Tell Carl when you first went to boarding school.
I went to boarding school when I was 4 years old. That's when I started boarding school.
4 years old, Carl.
so Roger had to run for his life out the back door, and you were sent to boarding school.
You got caught. I didn't.
Tell me about that, Colleen.
Well, I went to boarding school when I was 4. I was there till age 10, and at that point, the school was shut down because the dorm parent was molesting the little boys. So that's how that situation ended. It was an Indian boarding school, and it was a Christian boarding school. So I think my experience is a lot similar, probably to a lot of other people's. If you look at August 2011, Indian Country Today, they had a publication that they issued. And so there are actually stories. I've posted them on my Facebook as well. Just took pictures of the articles, but there are actual individual stories that people told, very heartbreaking. But you can even go back into history. My grandfather, one of my grandpas, Carl Gorman, R.C. Gorman's father, he wrote a book called The Power of a Navajo. So you could probably buy that online, used or new. And he wrote about his experience at boarding school as well over in Gallup, which is just a couple hours away from here. It's a border town of the Navajo reservation. And he ran away from school. The principal of the school, because he wouldn't stop speaking Navajo, chained him up in the basement and just gave him like bread and some water. And so he when he was 9, I think, he ran away with his 6-year-old brother and his other cousin. And so they ran all the way back to Chinle, which is about a 2-hour drive if you're just driving. But it took him a few days to actually go back during the winter time.
My grandmother hopped a freight to escape boarding school, and my mother escaped boarding school too. And I never understood why until just recently when I realized how many kids were being murdered. Now I know why they were so desperate to get out of there. Can you imagine being a little kid hopping a freight and going across the country to get away, and
And
you're
the
not
ones
even a
that
teenager yet.
the ones that did survive, the idea is they're reprogrammed, right?
And the ones that didn't, they ended up freezing to death out there, Carl, and they died.
My father actually, when he was about
The
10,
ones that didn't make it.
he would, because he could track, and he was a kid there at the boarding school, they made him track down the kids that ran away. And so he said the one that hurt him the most was like a little 6-year-old that probably got about 30 miles away. And he went to sleep under a tree. And so when my dad found him, he had one more hill to go over, but it snowed that night. And so he never woke up. But he was almost home. And so there were a lot of people that ran away from home, from boarding school, to go try and get their way back home.
See, this is what I mean. That if it doesn't affect normal Americans, they don't care about anything that we're talking about because it doesn't affect them. But if they walked a mile in our moccasins, how do you think non-natives would react with the stories we just told you if that was happening to them?
Right.
They don't think that way. It's just Indians.
Yeah, I think we all share the same opinion too, that it is actually affecting us, and part of the problems that we have in our society and our country, and even maybe even the increase in like strange supernatural or even paranormal activity, if everybody feels like they're getting poltergeist and sleep paralysis, maybe it's because of this long-standing history of trouncing over sacred grounds and heritage and
Like
doing all
America
this
was
kind of
built
stuff.
on a burial ground or something.
Right. It's all this big thing moved over the West, and yeah, and it affected all of you guys. But Roger, you had a very unique childhood where we've talked a little bit about before. I'd love to get into this part of it and kind of uplift the story of how we've all become friends and how it's come full circle, and touch on it a little bit. And in another future video and interview, I want to dig in really deep into the what you guys are willing to share about the Re-Indigenizing Minds project and the mapping system, and a lot of that. But Roger, you kind of escaped, and then also a lot of when your friends and kids around you were sitting at home playing video games, you sort of got picked or went and learned a whole different way of life from a lot of the people around you. So I'd love to talk about that.
It's more like I got involuntary drafted. It was my grandfather was a Makai healing medicine man, and right before they were going to find people that they wanted to, to teach this to, electricity came to San Simon, the little village I was at, and when they wanted to get the kids to come to this thing, electricity had taken over their lives already, and they wanted to stay home and watch cartoons and whatever else because they never had electricity before. And that's where the involuntary drafting came in because I was, the grandson of the medicine man. You're hired. I know where you are. You can't get away. You're hired. And
You're
there's but
next.
those kids, none of them came. It's you. And it's like, okay. And that's what I mean involuntarily drafted because it was my grandfather that was, was going to teach people. And I'm glad he did. At first, I didn't understand any of it at all. But as he's telling me all this ancient knowledge, and I'm sitting on a horse going on a roundup with him, and he's telling me about these ancient things, and I'm going by, and then there's a rattlesnake on a branch that's about this far away from my head, looking at me while he's talking to me, and I'm looking at him, and I'm looking at him. Listen about my grandpa. That's powerful here. And then every time in the morning, he got me up in the morning to learn to race the sun because I was the only one there, me and my brother. I had to admit my brother was with me, my younger brother, because he couldn't get away either. We lived in the same place. We had to race the sun. There was a mountain on this side, and there was a place that was about a mile this way and a mile back. And he'd get me up in the morning before the sun came up, and he says, "Okay, I want you to run to that field and turn around and run back." And so I'd run down on that field and run back. And if I got back before the sun came up over the mountain, he would teach me all this ancient knowledge. If the sun beat me, he'd say, "Well, we just got to get you up early tomorrow. Let's go to work."
Wow.
It's really hard to always beat the sun. And I'm glad I did because every time I beat the sun, then he'd take me out in the desert and just teach me things. Then a little later, he said, "We need you to go up on a roundup." And I said, well, I'm going to go on a roundup for, because I need help, because you're my grandson. And then, okay. And then, so I go to the roundup, and I go out there with him to the roundup, and I said, everybody out here's the elders here. And he goes, yeah, so what's the problem? Nobody speaks English or Spanish. I had to learn to listen really well. I couldn't speak, but I could hear really good what they were telling me. And then a little later, I go around and I look at all the people, and then I realized that everybody that's in that roundup, all over 20 of them were all medicine people. And then they focused on teaching me things. And then as I got older, I went out to Sells, Arizona, and I met the people over there on where my uncle lives in Tapawa. And then the elders there got a hold of me. And the ones that were in the south side, they understood something about me. They were the ones that said, because everybody was always trying to take my culture away, Northwest culture. You got to be Dene. You got to be Tono Atham. I'm not Tono Atham. You got to be Apache. You got whatever tribe I was at, I got to be them. But then the elders came to me and they said, you know what? We don't want you to lose any of your Northwest culture that you learned. We want you to retain everything that you have. We want to add to it to create a third energy. And I went, what third energy? Listen to us and just do as we say. So I said, okay, I'm just happy I don't have to give up my Northwest identity. That made me real happy because I wanted to stay who I am. And I'm not, Southwest to begin with. So I let them add that to me, and they trained it and all that. And that was the first step of getting to everything I'm showing you now, was those medicine people and the stories and the legends they told me. The stories that a mean leader is assassinated. And then they talk about Montezuma, how he was murdered and killed 4 times, and how Iatoi was killed 4 times, and how they paralleled each other. And it was from that legend that I start realizing that we're talking about cycles. Iatoi and Montezuma are connected. He died 4 times. He died 4 times. He died the same way. He died the same way. He got killed by. He got killed. This is referring to a cycle, and that's when I started to realize there's a myself. I did the 260, time what 267, 260 either. You hit indigenous messiahs all the way back beginning of the cycle to 2038. We don't have one Jesus. We got a whole bunch of them.
And I think one thing that Roger might have gone over really quickly that maybe your audience might not have realized was that Roger, his mom remarried into the Tohono O'odham people down in Arizona. And so his Makah grandpa was down there. And so that's where Roger learned from all these different Makai people who were the medicine people. And so that's where he learned a lot of information. And so they appreciated his culture. They had a big conversation about it, and they said they don't want to take away him being Quinault. They want to add to it.
She's right. I forgot to add that. My mom remarried Tohono O'odham, and then she moved to southern Arizona. And then when I told you about they were trying to adopt me, she got wind of it. She went up to Washington, grabbed my butt from Washington, took me all the way to Arizona, changed my name to Roger Ramon so I wouldn't have the culty tied to my name, so they could never find me. Wow. I had to be a different person until I was 18. Then they couldn't, adopt me out after that. Then I could go to culty again. But I was Ramon for the longest time, even though I wasn't really legally Ramon, just to get away from adoption people. I did.
So when you got away from that, when you got sent up there, that's when that whole group of elders, they basically scooped you up under their wing and started taking you out and teaching you all of these things that tie all the way into Montezuma and this.
I'll tell you something really depressing that I never told anybody. For the longest time, I wasn't accepted by the kids. I wasn't accepted by the tribe. Because I was different Indian, different tribe, different cultural, different everything. Everything, the way I look. I felt like I was getting pushed out. When I was a little tiny kid, I was already getting suicidal over it. And my grandfather recognized that. And he went, you feel like you don't belong. That's what the problem is. And I said, yeah, look how I get treated. People just shit on me everywhere I go. He said, well, you know what? I'll be your grandpa. Come over here. came over, and that's how it all started. That's the problem. I'll be your grandpa. Come on, let's go. First, you got to learn how to drive this truck. But I'm only 11, Grandpa. We're on a roundup. We're out in the middle of the desert, and I get bit by a rattlesnake. How am I going to drive to the hospital? And who's going to drive? Oh, okay, I'll learn. 11 years old, going through the desert, running over bushes, running into the washes, but I was driving.
That's awesome.
And it was my grandfather that started it all. Because if it wasn't for my grandfather being accepting as he was, I wouldn't be anywhere where I am right now. Everything that you're seeing right now was because of my grandfather's. He was the one that put the upbringing into me. I was the other son, so every summer I was sent to my grandpa because that was, I guess, in their mind, punishment. Then the biological sons could stay at home and and get rid of the other guy, the other man's
Kid.
get them out to the grandparents, thinking that they were punishing me, but they weren't. They had no idea until my father was ready to die. And on his last days of when he was alive, he came in and he goes, I want to apologize for all the way I mistreated you. And I said, you don't need to apologize. He said, but I mistreated you so bad. I said, Dad, I'm going to tell you one thing. For everything that I learned right now, everything good and bad had to happen for me to learn it. So don't apologize. What do you mean? And I said, got a pen? And he says, yeah. And I got paper and I drew the tonal off the maze by hand and handed it to him. What I didn't realize was that was a sign that I was the one that knew the knowledge. And he looks at it. You're the one. You've been the one all along. My whole life, he was putting me down. And I was the guy they were waiting for. And then he died. When I went to go see him, there were eagles all along the road to his house when I was walking to see him, all like soldiers, all lined up. And when I left, they were still lined up. And I left. And then that was the last I saw of my dad. But I
Wow.
give him respect for trying to apologize for the mistreatment because I was being mistreated. That was part of the reason I felt suicidal. And I think he realized that after a certain point. But after a certain point in my life, I realized that everything good and bad had to happen in order for me to learn what I know. So I can't be upset about the bad things anymore like I used to be, all psychotic and depressed and pissed off about it. And then I realized if I didn't have that part, I wouldn't know what I know now. I had to take the good with the bad, in other words, and accept
Yeah.
both.
It seems like it puts you through almost a form of initiation. And these elders that they took you out and you shared a couple of the experiences and things that they showed you. And I was wondering if you wouldn't mind maybe picking one or two of those experiences of maybe places that they took you that most people will never get to go, or things that you got to see or that they taught you. I think that
I'll
would be
tell you
really special.
an experience of my uncle, who was a medicine man too. His name was Augustine Garcia. God rest his soul. None of these people were exposed to UFOs, flying saucers, or any of that because, well, there was no electricity. How could they? So they were telling me a story that when you see something in the desert, don't freak out on what happens, just go along with it. And I said, well, what are you talking about? Every now and then we'll be going through a desert and you'll see a pinpoint of light on the horizon. I said, okay, so what's that got to do with me? When you turn your head, that pinpoint will come right up to your face and your head. And when you try to turn to look at it, it'll go back again. Don't let it freak you out because it's part of what's natural out there. It happens all the time. And I went, they're talking about UFOs, but they don't realize it. I knew because I was off, where the TV land is at, and was able to watch, and read the books. And they're talking about UFOs. And to them, it was the magic lantern that would come up to you magically and be right next to your head. And when you tried to look, it would go back. And it would come back and it would go like that. But you could never catch it with your vision because it was that fast before you could even turn your head. It was back where the horizon again. So don't let it annoy you. Don't let it bother you. Just keep doing with it. It's not. And I go, okay. Then one time I was going out to the valley. And as a kid, back to being naive, my grandfather said, no, you're in here. I'm going to take you to the whole valley. He took me to there was adobe buildings that were all melted down. and said, "This is where the family that's in San Simon originally came from. This is where the village used to be." Okay, you know the other family over there? We were the other side of the valley. This is where they originally had their village. Now they live in San Simon. And you see this one over here? Yeah. And then I went to them. That's interesting because as a kid, it felt like there were abandoned houses like from 20, 30 years ago. But when in actuality, there were probably buildings that were abandoned 2,000 years ago.
Mm.
But to me, I was, naive little kid. And, oh, they lived here just 20 years ago and they moved to the village over there with electricity. My little monkey brain thinking, that's not 20, 30 years back. Until he took me to a place where the field and a row of rocks were. This is a defensive rock wall. And I said, okay, that's cool. What's that for? That was for the field that's over on the other side of it. So what's on the other side? And I looked. And I went, oh my God. What he showed me in that area was something from BC. And then I said, this is old. How old is this place? Oh, look at the word Pasinamo'o. Pasinamo'o, that means buffalo head. What did you just say? Buffalo. There were buffalo here? Why do you think it's called Pasinamo'o? There used to be grasslands, used to be swamplands, there used to be rivers, and there used to be them too. And I went, man, my grandfather showed me all these ancient places. Then he pointed out a mountain. On that mountain, there's a city of stone nobody's ever seen yet. And then we've gone up there to find it because after a certain point, I had to leave the reservation when I became Roger Culty because when I was Roger Ramon, everybody assumed I was Tono Atom and then never questioned me. As soon as I took back my real last name, I lost all of that with the Tono Atom because my name is now Culty and I'm legally a Quinault. They could legally ask me to leave the reservation. So rather than that happen, I just voluntarily left on my own. I still love the place, still love the people, love the experience. But I just didn't want the experience of having the tribe to tell me to leave after being there all my life. That would have broke my heart. So I just voluntarily came here. Still going to go back to visit because I still got family down there.
You should talk about the city you saw.
Hmm?
The city, the ancient city too, that you saw all the way to the horizon.
Oh yeah, when I was living in Santa Beer outside of Tucson, Arizona, I was living at the base of this hill where the Indian hospital was at. And it was in the wintertime. I'm always looking for ancient things. And there was petroglyphs on the top of this hill that I always like to hang out at. But this is the funny part. In order to see me where I was at, you had to drive through 18 ancient ball courts to come see Roger Culty. Ancient Hohokam ball courts.
18 of them?
Drive through them to see me. I mean, not go around them. Through them.
Really?
18 of them. That was major league over there. And then my house, where I was living at, was on the other side of the ball courts. So I went up on top of the hill, and it was the winter time, and I'm doing my own business. And it was the first time I actually saw ruins at the base of where the river was at and the hill was at. I got all excited. There's a foundation. There's the wall. There's the angles. It's 90 degrees. I can see a little bit. And then I was all excited because I got to see the ruins for the first time at the edge of the hill. But because all the leaves fell off of the trees and the bushes were almost, sparse because of the winter time, you could see the land underneath it. And I guess because my eyes got adjusted to the ruins that I saw at the base of the hill, I looked up like this, south toward Nogales. And when I looked toward the south, that city went all the way to the horizon and over it. Tucson was way over here about this little P-shaped thing was Tucson, modern Tucson. Ancient Tucson went forever. It was a megatropolis. Nobody knows it. I do. This place was a lot more populated and a lot more busier than people could ever imagine. This place was like, what would you call the New York Stock Exchange?
Wow.
And the cities here are massive. If you go to Phoenix, the city that they were showing you there, you're going to really, if you go LiDAR, you're going to find out these cities are miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. They're not just what they're showing you on the little map.
And then you
Just like,
started to, is that how you started realizing that this was all connected with like the
Global mapping.
trade routes and migration routes to other locations in this whole mapping system? Or when did that start to come along?
well, that started to happen is when I start figuring out the numbers for the real golden mean ratio and the real number for pi. And then I was trying to give it back to the Uto-Aztecans because that's where I thought it originated from. Because I thought they would appreciate it because the numbers were Mayan and some of them were Anasazi,
Mm.
but they didn't appreciate a damn thing I had anything to show. They didn't even want to hear anything that I had to say.
Mm.
Then I realized, what am I doing? It's the Clatsop tradition that ran the global trade network, not Maya, not Hohokam, not Pueblo. Clatsops ran. There were three people that ran this whole global side. We were the headquarters. The other one was Teotihuacan. The other was Tiwanaku.
Mm.
Now you can imagine how old this might be.
Wow.
And then
Yeah.
I realized my culture was what my grandfather was doing. No disrespect. That's when I said, fuck the Aztecans. I'm picking up where my grandfather left off. This is my tradition and my culture because this is what my great grandfather was doing before me. And I'm just going to pick up where he left off because he ran the Chinook trade network. People don't know that the trade network with the Chinooks, they think it's just that little area with the Columbia River. No, it goes all the way up into Montana. It goes all the way up to Skinwalker Ranch. That Skinwalker Ranch on the top is our polygonal floor. That's our trade. On the top, you go to the mesa, there's a polygonal floor up there. That's our marker from the 39th latitude to the 49th latitude. And then below that, there's another one from 39 to the 29th latitude, which is the Trincheras people. They use Trincheras as their trade boundary markers. Then from 29 to 19, those are the pyramid people. They use pyramids as their trade markers so they
Mm.
can mark their trade areas. And then you go from 19 all the way down to 9. They used, check this out, Olmec stone heads were their trade barrier markers so they could do trade. And then from 9 to the equator, Costa Rican stone spears were the trade markers. But nobody wants to believe the Indian.
And it all lines up and this whole thing. And now you've been able to basically start to piece it together and trace all of these routes together, and they go places where there's undiscovered things, like you said, these almost lost cities and serpent mounds and maybe pyramids and all kinds of things.
Just to prove to you how exact this thing, I'm going to go to not an unknown place, but a remote place that people say they can't locate even in modern times. 3.25 times 8.5 equals 27.625 south. The exact latitude for Easter Island, out in the middle of nowhere. That's how exact this thing is.
So the equations that he's talking about right now, the information that he's pulled out of the Zia symbol, and
And the Maya.
and has come up with the conversion equation between the current world system that uses the 12 base system, and the indigenous paradigm, which uses a 13 base system. So when you look at our calendar system, it's based on 13 and 20.
I'm not embarrassed to show what I know. 13
Is it?
times 2. Oh,
And what Roger did here was he put it into English, put the glyphs, but he put the glyphs into English so it'd be easier to use.
and color coded it for the directions.
Right, and color coded it. So there's 13 columns. So there's 20 days, and in each, and there's 30 columns. So 20 days times 13 is 260 days. So that's the 260-day calendar.
And it's a base number, that 260 with the 13, because when you see that the base, the common denominator number is 13 on all of these, you'll see
Yeah.
why. 13 times 9 is 117, which is the orbit of Mercury. 13 times 45 is 585, which is the orbit of Venus. 13 times 28 is 364, the orbit of Earth. 13 times 60 is 780, the orbit of Mars. And you can do that all the way to Pluto and 2 objects beyond with all the planets using.
So you basically map out
It's
what
the Interplanetary Almanac.
you can use it to map out the year count for all the planets. Earth is the one that's 364. So this was just my template for we want to get more information to people. So I just put this website together kind of as a prototype for a website that we want to definitely put on. And this is the study that I think of the Aztec calendar stone with the whole compass map, because that ties the Aztec calendar stone to Navajos, to the Hawaiian star compass, to different tribes of Americas, 260-day calendar, and Pleiades, and Venus. So that 52-year cycle that happens, that's because Pleiades, there's like I want to say a conjunction that happens during that time with Pleiades, Venus. So Pleiades rises as Venus sets as the evening star, and then at the end of those 52 years and 13 days. And then when the sun rises, Venus rises as the morning star. And so during the night, when Pleiades is directly overhead at midnight, that's when the new 52-year count cycles restarts, and that's for the Aztec calendar. And Roger has correlated to the Mayan Baktun as well. Cool. There you go. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, this is the overlay of the Hawaiian star compass, overlaid with the Zia symbol, as well as an overlay of the same numbers that are on the Aztec calendar stone. They all think that all these they think these 3 items are separate when they're really all based on the same concept, but they just don't know that yet. And when I overlaid everything, that's when I found out that they really are all the same thing.
Really? So they all how is that possible? Maybe explain how that's possible, and then how it might work.
Well, how it was possible is that we were operating as one people, but somewhere along the line in the past, we became separated, and we started thinking that all of the things that we're doing, the star compass is different than what they're doing on the mainland, and what we're doing on the mainland is different than their star compass, even though they're the same thing. We became disconnected. We lost our connection as indigenous people on a global level for some odd reason. Something happened to break the communication down, and then next thing you know, the Aztecs think their calendar stone is different than the Zia symbol, and the Zia symbol think they're different than the Hawaiian star compass. But as you can see on this, they're the same thing. The numbers all are the same. Everything's the same.
So there's a whole presentation that Roger does to explain the math behind this. And it starts off with the Zia symbol. And the basic breakdown is the Zia symbol, it presents a riddle. It's like a math equation, I guess. And the riddle is basically how to divide a circle equally into 16 parts. And then from that, you can come up with, Roger has come up with an equation that can be used to convert from the 12 base system to a
12 base.
To a 13 base. Yep.
And I'm not ashamed to even say the equation. 13 times 2 equals 26, which is, the Maya part of it. But then you take that 26 from the Mesoamericans, and then you divide it by the Anasazi 16, or the New Mexico Zia symbol. So when you take 26 and divide it into 16, then the number comes out to 1.625. That number is the real number for the golden mean ratio, not the one they're using today. Then you take that 1.625 and you times it by 2. When you multiply it by 2, it comes out to 3.25, which is the real number for pi and not the 3. I just don't know that they're using today. And then you take that 3.25 and then you times it by 9, and then it'll give you like a number like 29.25 north, and that's the latitude for Memphis, Egypt.
All of a sudden, all these ancient sites and pyramids and locations line up and start to make sense. How do you think, Roger? Where did it get off? We've talked about this before. When did the numbers change, do you think, to where
I even
pi
know
pi is the wrong number? Was it when Cortez came in with Montezuma and it all rippled effect out, or what do you
further,
think?
you got to go further back,
Further
way
back?
further back than that. The Sumerians, you were using 13 with Enoch. And if you read the book of Enoch, it has the same numbers that I'm using in my research. That's how I know. But then when you get up to Nebuchadnezzar, King Nebuchadnezzar from the Babylonian times, the
Yeah.
guy ended up eating grass and ended up mooing like a cow because he went crazy. Uh, it was him who changed the number from 13 to 12 and made it religious. And then
Oh,
they built the Tower of Babel and it fell apart. Bad architecture, 12.
this is it's amazing because it means that these cultures that built the sites where all of this mapping system that you've uncovered and restored and realized all lines up, it could date some of these sites a lot further back in history, meaning they could have been built a lot older than maybe we even accept today. What do you
Antediluvian or pre-diluvian?
Well, you go to 37 latitude of my 3.25 and you go to their trading partner. That 37th latitude is Mesa Verde, Colorado. And the other 37th trading partner that at the other end of the other side of the globe that they were trading with was some little settlement called Göbekli Tepe in Turkey.
Gobekli Tepe?
Its trading partner was Mesa Verde. Mesa Verde was its mentor, and Göbekli was the student. They were trying to get him onto this trading thing before I guess shit hit the fan, and they had to change plans after that. But nobody will want to believe that Mesa Verde were trading partners with Göbekli Tepe. The Göbekli Tepe's top trading point is at 39 degrees latitude, or in other words, Mount Ararat is their Atzlan. Mount Ararat is their Agartha. And wouldn't you say that's what the Christians and the Jews believe Mount Ararat to be?
Right. Yeah, it's all in all those different little groups and esoteric groups. It almost seems like the Freemasons and Rosicrucians and other groups came across these maps, maybe when they moved in and
They
fought with some of these
perverted it,
indigenous
Carl. Those
they
Masons
can
don't know crap.
I
They
know.
use 12. That's why they don't know crap.
That's why
Not
you see
that.
traces of them like they were going to these petroglyph sites and carving their own stuff around because they were looking for things
The
think
33rd degree is a no level of supernatural consciousness.
and
33 is the trademark for Tixla, Pakistan. 33 is the latitude for the Gila Cliff dwellings. 33 is the trade location for everybody globally. But they made it into a 33rd degree and some nonsense in the Masons, not craziness, when I know what 33 degree really means. The real Templars are the Micmacs. The other guys are just a branch in Scotland.
right,
But nobody knows that. I've been
right.
talking to the Micmacs, but they're just as secretive as the Masons. And I don't understand why natives want to be Masons first and natives second. I can't figure
So
that out.
all that stuff with the curse of Oak Island and up around the Great Lakes region and all that they think is Templar that came over from France and everything, a lot of that could be Micmac.
The other
Hmm.
way around.
And
Other
then
way
the thing
around.
about the Mary Magdalene nonsense with the Templars, that's not true. They're not descendants of Mary Magdalene. What they're hiding is they're the descendants of Apollonius of Tyana. And if the Pope would and the public found that out, that would blow Jesus out of the water. And that's why they had to get rid of them.
Right. It's so amazing, and they try to force fit a lot of the Templar symbology into Christian symbology when really it's hijacked out of the Micmac culture. A lot of it.
Look at Christopher Columbus's boat. What's on the big mast that he's on there? A Templar flag. Are we blind?
That's true. Yeah, he was trying to go back where they had, yeah, where
And
all
then
the
when the
trade
Templars
words.
got outlawed by King Philip, and they were made them into outlaws, you know what the those Templars became? They took down the red cross and they hoisted up a skull and crossbones, and they quit becoming named Templars, and they decided to call themselves pirates, and they
Pirates,
moved to the Caribbean.
right? It's so fascinating. We have this totally like a forbidden history, or this literally a whitewashed history trying to make it a different
Try
version.
covered up.
Right.
It's all covered up, right? And this,
They don't want you to know this because if you know the real truth about this place, then they won't be able to have the power that they have. The power that they have is able to bullshit everybody into believing that what they're telling them is the truth. That's why I said about the know-it-all ploy from the colonialists. It worked on us for a long time until we realized that it was just a ploy. They were just pretending to know it all.
Well,
and
it's like being in control of history, you know, them
Mhm.
saying New England and then completely eradicating the history of the people who existed before because it wasn't new. There were ancient peoples there from before.
Yeah, then they get to define who we are by their terms, and we don't tell them who we are like we're supposed to. Like, this is who we are to you. No, this is what an Indian is are, and this is where you're supposed to be. You couldn't invent the wheel. You're a savage. Now get out of the way and get back to your reservation. And
it's
then
this
go, wait
whole
a minute.
this ongoing pattern that you see of the white colonization and the westward expansion, the pilgrims and pioneers of Mormonism moving west, and that whole expansion and just pushing all of the tribal lands and the territories and everything, putting them onto reservations and into slave trade and all of that, and then
The
adopting
word
them
is
out.
invader. There's an invader and an invadee. We were the
Right,
invadee.
right. And the whole
And under
idea
the
in the
pretense that they were going to civilize us and turn us into these fine, upstanding citizens and give up our savage way to become intelligent and become a superior race like they are, didn't quite pan out.
Well, and
oh, go
that
ahead.
wasn't even really the plan. I mean, in reality, you know,
Okay, you take that
the
down.
subjugation of Native peoples, just like the subjugation of Black people, because this country was built on the backs of Black slaves and on the blood of Red people.
Let me say it to him. It's this way, Carl. It took the black man's muscle and the red man's blood to build America. And that was also the same time as the birth of the blues.
Mm,
So even, you know, it reinforces the power structures that exist today, because if you look at the what is it? I want to say the Tulsa. Is it the Tulsa riots, where they went into the Black communities? It was a fully functioning Black community. They had businesses. They were wealthy. People owned land and property, and they went in and destroyed it. And so the purpose really was to undermine the people of color's ability to have wealth. And a lot of times wealth is, you know, real estate, but to be able to run businesses and do things or even get loans,
It's called disaster capitalism.
right?
mm.
And so that racism and discrimination continues to exist today.
Oh, we can take that off now.
Oh yeah, here, I think we're done.
Yeah, it definitely, and you see that
Yeah,
pattern go on. And like we mentioned at the beginning, it also creates
we're back.
a psychological and spiritual and mental matrix that it places over everyone as well, to where how you even remember who you are, and this connection goes from 3.25 to 3.14, and the whole thing goes out of alignment, including everyone
Well,
living in the midst of it.
I want to explain something to the non-natives that maybe they will listen to me really seriously about this cultural trauma topic. Cultural trauma just doesn't go one way. The person that's doing it is a victim of cultural trauma as much as we are. They're just not aware of it.
Mm.
Cultural trauma goes both ways. It's affecting them as much as it has affected us, but they don't know how sick they become because of it. Not unless you're aware of it. You're just going to keep going that way until you start to realize, I'm going the wrong way.
Right.
And cultural trauma goes both ways. They're suffering it as much as we are. They just haven't gotten around to deal with it yet. That's why America's fucked up right now in the head and being lost because of that reason. They're suffering cultural, just don't know it.
It's kind of like someone who is an abuser or who like has rage blowouts. You know, they are affecting themselves as well, in carrying out their abuse on someone else.
Including the perpetuator.
And so, and they may not recognize it. And so it takes a lot of inner work to deal with that, to address it.
The only way it's going to work is communication, and that's why I'm proud of what you're doing. And the only way that's going to work is to communicate from non-native to native, and that's what we're doing right now. It may be unpleasant, maybe things you might not like to hear, but being in denial and up to your eyeballs in a river called denial isn't helping. The only way you're going to resolve this is to face it on, deal with it, so we can put it behind us and we can get on with the show. Until we do that, it's always going to be a ghost haunting both of us.
Mm.
And that's part of the reason of the hauntings that are going on at Mount Wilson.
Right.
Guilty consciences, bad sinners, both sides, not just saying white people. We're just as responsible for, it as well. Okay, Native people, what have we been doing since 1492? We've been partying. Have we done our ceremonies? Have we remembered our rituals? No, we've been drinking whiskey and tequila and whooping it up with the non-natives. We're just as guilty of not being responsible too.
And it's
So
really,
I'm not hunting
it's,
on
I
white
think,
people. I'm hunting on Indians too.
and we've talked about this so much because it's time. This whole idea of the name, the Re-Indigenizing Minds Project, and everything at the core of it, it's like, here I am, a white man, and I'm going out on these hikes and up to these petroglyph sites. I start having these like supernatural experiences, these visions, and having dreams, and having like all these kinds of things happen to me. And then almost like my house is haunted when I get home. I start digging into all this, like, well, what am I doing wrong? Where is this rift? Because I'm confronted with reality itself. I'm sitting
Okay,
there alone. And
real serious, Carl. This
yeah,
is real serious. I'm going to ask you something right here. What were you and your people at the beginning of time?
at the beginning of time, if I'm really honest with myself, I'd have to say I have amnesia and I'm trying to remember all that.
It's so far removed that at one time your people were indigenous. At one time, the black people started out at the beginning of time, they were indigenous.
Yeah.
The yellow man at the beginning of time when they started, they were indigenous. It wasn't just the red man, it's just that the other three forgotten. I'm going to tell you the real story of the Tower of Babel. When they were trying to build that tower, after they decided that they were going to use this 12 nonsense, they were going to build a tower and become gods themselves, and they tried to talk the Indians into it. We decided we didn't want nothing to do with it. While they were building the tower up to reach heaven, we were tunneling out. And when we tunneled out of that place and they got their languages mixed up and they got spread over the face of the earth, the Creator was so proud of us for not giving in to the other three races and joining them that He put us in America not to be disturbed by those three other races because
Mm.
of what we did. Because we didn't go along with the Tower of Babel. They did. They got thrown across the globe and confused their language while we were left alone and we were one people until 1492. Then the neighborhood went after that. But here goes the neighborhood.
There goes the neighborhood. So
we found some lost Italian on our beach.
So what can we do then, guys? Like Roger and Colleen, like when you, because you guys watched my videos, and Roger, you started reaching out to me and being like, Carl, and messaging me. And I was like, who's this guy messaging me all the time? I had no idea. Who's this Roger guy? And then I honestly, because I get messages a lot. And then I looked into what you were doing and what you were saying. And honestly, when you started sending me the holographic vision images of the different mapping systems and the symbols and glyphs, and how immediately that connected with what Chris Bartell said he learned how to do from the spirit of Skinwalker Ranch with his photography. And then all these places that I was going that you were telling me about, yeah, all of my world came colliding. And I was like, oh my gosh, Roger has like this key or knows something here. And now we're all talking. So what can we do with all of this, or anybody watching it? How can we start the healing process?
It's really simple. It starts with communicating. Location, nothing happens. That's why I'm saying this is important between natives and natives right now. This is the first step. This is the very first step. None of the other media companies ever before this ever wanted to include our perspective as Native people. Nobody even bothered to think about us, let alone ask us. But the first step to anything to be resolved is communication. If you don't open up a line of communication, nothing's going to happen. That's the very first step, and this is what we're doing right now. We're trying to communicate with non-natives, and if we do this right, we could build a bridge where we could start to understand each other. We don't understand each other because of misconceptions and misrepresentations. You maybe don't understand us. We do native programs. We could send to non-natives. They can see how we think. And then we don't understand how non-natives think. They send us programs of how they think back to us. We can understand how they think, and we can start communicating and making things happen. Because I'm telling you what's really going on. There's a four-cornered house, and I'm the guy that's in the middle of the house. I go to one corner, and there's the Hispanics. And I go, "What are you guys up to?" "We're talking about those Indians over there in that corner over there." "Well, go talk to those Indians. What's going on with the Indians over here?" "We're talking about those blacks in the corner over there." "Go to the blacks. Who are you talking about there?" "We're talking about those white people in the corner over there." Go to what? "What are you talking about here?" "We're talking about those yellow people that are in the other corner over there." I said, "Why are you just talking about it? Why don't you just go talk to them?" And that's the problem. Everybody's talking about them, but nobody talks to each other. And I'm the guy in the middle that's gone to all of them and found out that nobody's talking to anyone or communicated. And at the dinner table, it's those people. And it's just a problem at the dinner table. And it never goes any further than that. So I said, I'm going to break this. I'm going to go to the Indians, even if it means like pulling teeth. Let's go and talk to those people. I went to the South Valley, talked to the Chicanos. I got chewed out for it. They told me I wasn't Chicano or some weird nonsense, which is stupid because there was no natives. There would be no Chicanos. I don't know. They think they're their own race, I guess, over there. "You're not from the South Valley." "Wait a minute. We're the same people. Indians are drunks." "Wait a minute. You're talking about yourself." "What are you talking about?" "You're me." They think I had to tell them, "You're different." No, we're not. They want you to think you're different. Why? If natives, Chicanos, and Hispanics ever united, we'd rule this country. The white man knows that. That's why they can't allow natives and Chicanos and Hispanics to think they're the same people. Got to make them separated. As three, they can deal with this. But if we all came together, we'd be the majority. Right. And everyone knows that. And the government knows that too, even though you're hiding it.
And the only thing that they're afraid of is the reintroduction and the relearning and the restoration of this lost system and this lost knowledge and method that would reconnect us to the universe,
to the creator. What I'm trying to do, trying to bring it all together to something where we're all one people again. Their divide is their program is to keep us separated. Keep them separated, you know.
So part of the purpose of why we call it the Re-Indigenizing Minds Project is because, first of all, the term decolonize is too off-putting to people.
And don't give credit to the colonizers. They already had, their 500 years of ruining the show.
So if you decolonize, what you're doing is you're focusing your actions, your intention, all your energy on reacting to colonizers.
You're giving your power to them.
Whereas if you're re-indigenizing,
you're giving the power to us.
You're recentering, you're refocusing that energy on yourself as an indigenous person, and it's for all peoples. It's not just for red people. It's for all colors of people.
We all were indigenous. We just forgot.
We're all indigenous to Mother Earth. And so the Re-Indigenizing Minds Project, in sharing some of this information, it's about trying to realign people back to natural time as
natural
well. Natural laws. And so because right now we're living by man-made time.
And man-made rules.
And so if people realign to natural time and remember that they are indigenous, then when they look at the world around them, they're looking at it through that mindset, that paradigm. And so you start thinking about Mother Earth, and your brothers and sisters are the plants and the animals. And so you see it differently than you do from a capitalist perspective. Or
look at it this way: Mother Earth feels neglected because her children have abandoned her. Look at it that way.
Yeah. Even worse than that, it's like what we've done is taken this beautiful garden that is free and producing everything that we need, that connects us with all of the energy, the free energy and the life sustenance and the food and the water, all the life that you could. And instead of living in harmony and connecting with that and forming a relationship, we go in and we cut it down and pillage it, and we try to buy it up and say that we own it and fence it off and control it.
Right, man, it's too busy trying to conquer nature. You can't do that. That's the dumbest thing in the world. Nature always wins in the end. Mother Nature will come and spank you in the ass so bad that you'll be back in a cave in the jungle in no time.
And ultimately, we are nature. And when they change the timeline, when we're not even on the right migrational path and we're not even connected to it anymore, we have to face the reality of how that has consequences and has affected us as a people.
The skyscraper is a metaphor of that, how removed from nature they are. The higher their Tower of Babel goes, how much they want to be removed from this natural earth. It's a sign that they don't want to be connected to this place anymore when it's a skyscraper. But they don't look at it that way. I do. I go, you don't realize they're rebuilding that Tower of Babel all over again, and it's going to come down again, no different than the last time. Right. Like they didn't learn the last time around, I put up a thing on Facebook, that sometimes the creator puts you in situations to see if you're a dumbass will be able to figure it out, that instead of repeat all over that mistake again,
Right.
You apparently do all the time. It bit me again. I wonder why.
Well, I think the sacred calendar, the 260-day calendar, the year count calendars, that I think the most important and basic thing about it that's very functional is you understand when to plant.
Your place in the universe too.
That calendar is really neat too because it's multi-dimensional. There are multiple levels of understanding to it. You could use it as a family planning calendar.
And I'm going to tell you why you're beginning to come to a new awareness spiritually. Bilateral symmetry. You don't realize it, but when you're looking at that ancient art, it's balancing out your left and your right brain. White man's logic has made it like this, but when you look at the art long enough, it makes it go like this. Yeah. Because the left and right need to be used to view it. So it brings the left and the right lobes to the same equal.
Roger, I get dizzy. I sit in front of them. I sit down and meditate, and if I sit there long enough, it's like I hear a frequency.
That's happening.
And, it's real, and that's what made me think there's something to these places.
Last night I was doing that last night, and I heard a whooshing sound, and I decided I needed to take a break because I felt like there was a jet in my head going. oh, time to take a break. Go to bed. And then seriously, man, it was hissing so loud. That's, the development that when it's
Right.
starting to happen.
I
Where
feel
we just in our minds and our souls and our hearts to where it used to be.
Right.
But we're not used to it after thousands of years.
it's
So
like
it's new to us.
now all they have nicknames for all these things. They call it like remote viewing and psychic abilities and telepathy or out of body travel, but these are all things that indigenous people have known and connected with through these places for a long time.
I'll tell you a little story that my grandma told me. God bless her heart. She was a great teacher. She said, "Grandson," I said, "Yeah, I'm confused." And I said, "Oh, about what, Grandma?" "About the white man." "What's wrong with the white man?" "They believe in intuition, but they don't believe in ESP." And I went, "You know what, Grandma? You're right. They're just two different words for the same thing."
Yeah, all of it is. It's so fascinating.
Everybody has it.
And how could we ever anybody reconnect with that if we're totally on the wrong timeline and looking in the wrong places and we're all staring at our phones and we've lost touch with this.
That ancient calendar that I've been talking about, that puts you back into sync. It's a parade. And this cosmic parade, everybody is a part of this parade, is playing a part in the band. And then way at the back of the parade, there's this hairless monkey that's beating out a beat and making all this racket and making up his own beat and his own drum and marching in his own way. And that one monkey in the back is messing it up for the rest of the band. That one monkey's us. We make up our own rules and we're not marching with the rest of the band. Here we think we sound great and all this. We're the worst instrumentalists in the band as a species. We're in the back there banging on an offbeat. We're not even marching to the right march with everybody else. We're not even in the line. That's how removed we are. That's the only way I could say it as a metaphor. We need to get back into the parade, get back with the band, get the beat, get into the natural rhythm. Ooh.
It really is a frequency. Right?
I think that
The sine
Sine
wave,
wave.
the sine wave,
We call it serpent. White man call it sine wave. It's all the same thing. Energy.
the serpent line, yes.
right, quantum physics.
Mm-hmm.
I was even going to try and pull up on the Google Drive the petroglyph
Even her
video that
Spider
you
Woman.
did, Colleen.
You know what Spider Woman is about? Spider Woman. The spider has 8 arms. 8 times 2 is 16. What does a Spider Woman believe in? She webbed all of the things in creation. And what does the white man call it? They call it string theory. Carl, it's the same thing.
It's all the same thing.
Just different words to describe the same exact concept.
I feel like the calendar really captures it too, because if you look at the 260-day calendar 3-dimensionally, so if you get it, you roll it into a tube, you tape the ends together, and you look at any number, and you follow that number, and you turn the calendar as a cylinder, you turn it. It actually, the numbers occur in a spiral.
No, she's wrong. She's almost right. It's shown as a helix. It's 2 spirals in a human DNA helix. And then you put 2 of them together, you get double. It's the angelic DNA for angelic beings when you put 2 together. But you put 1 together, it's us humans, and it's a 1 strand of helix. But you do 2 pages together, it's the angelic beings. They got 4 strands of DNA.
So all in how you use the sacred geometry, it reveals.
If you could get a transparent acetate and make a copy of the 260-day calendar where it's transparent, all you got to do is fold it into a tube and tape it where it's symmetrically balanced, and then put it up to light. You can see the helix. It's also the sign for how light travels to the earth. The light doesn't come straight down. It comes down in a helix form. The Egyptians understood that with their sun disk things over there. But it's a helix. Sun rays come down in helixes.
Okay, I'm going to show this video that Colleen did of the serpent petroglyphs. So maybe explain what you did here, Colleen.
I applied a mirroring technique to the petroglyphs. So you basically flip an image over and you mirror it. I did it in Photoshop. You can use low tech. You could just get a mirror, put it on a picture, and slide it from left to right.
And look at the two half images,
And then
the reflection and the image that's on the paper.
So this is one technique to apply sacred geometry to ancient art and architecture.
There's another one where you use the entire overlay over the subject that I wanted to show to Chris Bartel. When you do the other technique that I'm talking about, the complete overlay of another one, you could turn art into holographic three-dimensional objects that actually are 3D, which is
I'm gonna try. I'll pull some of those up here in just a second too to show some of the crystal holographic vision of some of these symbols.
Oh yeah, you have them on the Google Drive.
So I have them all here. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that. You can show them.
Yeah. So this one here, when I did it, the serpent head petroglyph that you were at, it kind of seems to open its eyes, and you can see it. And there's other imagery.
You could even see the fangs underneath where the petroglyphs are. That
Yeah,
area.
so as you move it back across here, you can see how the shape, if you just walked up there and didn't know how to use this way of looking at these petroglyphs and these panels and the glyphs, you would totally miss the other way of viewing it, this sacred geometric mirror vision, to where you can actually reveal there's like a whole
Right now,
serpent
modern
face.
man and all their ancient art, they're only looking at half an image for the last 5,000 years. And it's annoying because I know what's really in there, but nobody believes me. And they're so smart. And, you know, and I've been waiting for, I don't know, umpteen years, and they still haven't gotten in. The only guy that got close to what I'm doing is Chris Bartel. And I give him a lot of credit. He did it independently from us. Didn't even know who I was. And I give him a lot of credit for nature. You got to pay attention to more to Chris. Nature's talking to him. His mother brought him up with native beliefs. You need to rely more on Chris Bartel. His mom installed into him everything the way he is today. He's your person to be with you right now is Chris Bartel. His mom taught him to respect native culture, to respect native beliefs, to respect the ancient teachings. She put that in him. And that's why the people at Skinwalker Ranch couldn't stand him, because he kept bringing it up, and they didn't want to bring it up because, you know, Chief Wakara would have came up, and, you know, Brigham Young would have came up. And what I saw in the chat, that Brandon is one of the grandsons of Brigham Young.
Could be part of it.
I mean, it's a little circle here. And that's why I say you can't just have Christians doing this thing. Christians ruin everything. They don't know. Christians, science history only go back 3,000 years. What kind of nonsense is that? When science and politics gets in the way, there's no serious research on. There's always political or religious agendas going on. It gets in the way of any serious research. Yeah. Get Christians out of there. Get politics out of there. Talk to the Indians. Quit talking to each other and talk to us.
That's
Not
really
all of us are forgotten. Like you found me. There might be other me's out there for all I know. Right now, I'm the only one I know of, but I couldn't be the only one. As a matter of fact, this thing has turned into a movement. There's another guy in Micmac that's doing the same thing I'm doing, but in New Brunswick. And there's a native in Siberia doing the same thing I'm doing over there. There's a Maya down in Belize that's doing the same thing I'm doing down there. And I have no idea about South America and these other places.
There's actually a Pueblo Indian who was working with us, and he almost got kicked out of his tribe because of what we were doing.
Yeah, the Pope wanted to put some Christian thing where their kiva was at, and it was his land, and he objected to it. And the Pueblo pretty much ran him out because he wasn't being a good little Christian. Let the Pope get his way to put his Christian thing next to their kiva. He says, no, kiva's meant for natives. We don't need anything. To be honest with you, Pueblos, you keep telling me I'm not traditional while you're wandering around kissing Christian saints' butts and statues around your Pueblos. What's with that? If I'm not so traditional, what are you doing carrying around Christian statues? Right. Let's get real here. I get accused of not knowing my tradition or my culture, but let's be truthful. Why don't I know it? It's because somebody that was an elder didn't take the time to teach us our language and our culture. So partially it's my fault, but there's another person's fault. the elders who aren't responsible enough to teach us these things before they die and go to the grave with it, and it's lost forever.
Right.
And then somebody like me has to come on and figure it out from scratch because it's 6 feet under.
And
You don't
that's
know
where,
your language. You don't know your tradition. They don't bother to tell us. What's with that, elders? Come on, I want an answer.
and so we find ourselves in this situation where you've got totally disconnected people who have no business even being friends. You've got Chris Bartell. He's working, as a security officer and at the Nevada test site and at Skinwalker Ranch. And he's just out there with the dogs, connecting with things, with the earth, sitting out there meditating and sleeping out on the mesa. And he's in this ancient indigenous location, and he starts finding arrowheads and petroglyphs and
They took him in, Carl. The
right. And
ancients took him in.
he develops this ancient way of using sacred geometry to flip his photography, and it starts revealing these things that he didn't know. And it's like
And
this
why? Because
spiritual
he had
path.
respect for native culture. That's the reason they brought him under their wing. If he didn't have that, he'd be like everybody else out there. He'd probably coughing up blood like you know who.
Right. Some people go to these sites and they disrespect them, and they end up sick or with this like hitchhiker phenomena or all sorts of different things. And right now it's a problem.
My teacher, Dave Stewart, the head of the anthropology department at UNM, he said, I was a hard nosed archaeologist and I didn't give a crap about the bodies I was digging up. It was just a job. Then one day I dug up a skull and I was in one of these pueblos and the eyes had mud in it. And I opened up one of the eyes and opened it up to mud. And then out of the eyes, a butterfly came out and spread its wings in front of him. And then it flew up into his face. And then he got cancer.
Mm. Yeah.
And then you learn to respect after that. And after he told me that story, I learned to respect things after that. I was just another,
Yeah.
another dumb archaeologist that didn't give a crap about who I was digging up or whose bones I was handling until that happened. And then it came and kicked me in the ass and humbled me. And I had to learn to respect going to these places.
I went to this a petroglyph site over by kind of by Snow Canyon, and went up there, which Snow Canyon is a Mormon name after Lorenzo Snow, the Mormon prophet. I guarantee you that's not the actual name of the canyon. But I was up there at this ancient petroglyph site, sitting there, and same thing. I went in there, kind of lighthearted, goofing around, just thinking I'm going to film a YouTube video of the panels. And I sat there and kind of was meditating, and no joke, had about 4 hours of missing time. Like I passed out even though I was sitting up. I wasn't even laying down or anything. 4 hours missing, and the sun went down. So I had to like make my way out of this slot canyon and try to get back to my truck. And the whole way out, I was completely dizzy and throwing up and sick. And even when I got home, I was passing blood and had to like take 3 days to rest. And all of that was like,
You pull a James Keenan.
yes, I was like, I did something wrong. I disrespected this energy here. This something here. There's some real magic. That's the way I was thinking. There's some real magic to these places, or
But what
some
happened when you turned it around? Now you're finding out all kind of things because now they took you under their wing because you learned. I don't know if James has, but you learned.
We also leave offerings,
Yeah, those
You
offerings
mentioned
really
it
help.
before, you leave offerings, spirit
Before
food.
you take anything, leave them something. Even if it's just a prayer, leave them something.
yeah.
Because that's the main problem. White man's always taking and they ask later. That's always been the problem. You take those ancient artifacts, it belongs to that ancient man that's there. And then they can't understand why they're being haunted by him. He wants his shit back. I mean,
Yeah.
you didn't ask, you just took. At least you would have left an offering or prayer. They wouldn't be haunting you.
What
But
what
no, it's just the Indians again. Well, let's just
what
take it.
well what could people do, like if people are interested in doing this and they want to do it the right way? Obviously, you follow the law, don't touch the panels, the petroglyphs, don't take anything. What is the right way to do it? And then I want to show some of these uh
Okay.
cool
The
sacred
first
geometry
rule,
images.
if you're ever anywhere, this is a native rule. Leave it just the way you found it.
if you pick it up and look at it, when you're done looking at
Put
it,
it
you can
back.
put it back.
Or if you build a fire, cover it up and make it look like you were never there. That's the problem with the white man. They shit and piss in the water, they shit in the air, and they don't think twice about it. And then they wonder why they get all these diseases, because they're not showing the respect. They're not leaving cornmeal offerings. They're not saying thanks for all the things that have been given to us from Mother Earth. Mother Earth is neglected from it. And then because of it, we are now turning into fleas on her back. And now she's ready to scratch us off if we're not careful.
That's very true.
And
That's a very powerful metaphor. Fleas on the back. We have to have a relationship with our planet and with each other instead of just become a parasite. That's
do you respect your own mother that way? That's how you should look at it. This is our mother. Would you treat your mother the way you do that? Would you sit and piss on your mom?
right.
They don't look at it that way. That's why they're disconnected. That's why they're having problems. That's why they're lost. That's why they're stupid. That's why they're going left and right wing. Left wing, right wing, it don't matter. The left and the right wing are all connected to the same fucked up bird. Don't matter what wing you go on, the bird's messed up.
Right. You're exactly right. Yeah, and it's gone on so long, this idea of just taking opportunity and trying to take advantage to get ahead, that the whole thing is out of balance. And
I think too, like when you go. Oh.
Too close to that wall. That funny bone again. Not so funny.
No. I think when you like leave an offering too, like if you're going out there, like, maybe to plan for it, like bring that extra little bit of water that you might leave, there, might pour some water out for spirits, a little bit of food, a trail mix or whatnot. Little tobacco, just even right there.
Burn a little sage if you have it.
Just don't start a wildland brush fire.
Mm-hmm. See, sage and cedar gets rid of your human scent so you could communicate with the higher beings. We stink like hell to them. They don't want us around when we smell like that. So when you smudge yourself off of that, you're getting rid of the human caca smell so you can communicate. Whoa. They don't want you in their company when you smell like a stinky human. So smudge yourself with cedar and sage so you could be in their presence. They're not going to be sticking their nose and going, ooh, take a bath, dude.
And I think if you're there with a mindset of gratefulness and thanks, when you're giving thanks for being alive, for your family, for all those who are here before, those who are here now, those who come after, and you're kind of making those thoughts, I think that that's when sometimes connections can be made to the past, or gifts might be provided to you. If there is an arrowhead that is offered to you, you can give thanks and
if it's gifted to you.
in. Yeah, you can breathe it in and then give thanks.
Ancients do give things.
That's a form of protection. You can wear that, put into a necklace around your neck or something. But also, like I said, usually that's when you give thanks. When it and then if it gets taken away from you, you don't have to be too hurt about that, because sometimes as a form of protection, if some negative energy is directed at you, then that arrowhead might take it, and so you might lose it. And so it's kind of like crystals. They come and present themselves to you, and then they leave you when it's their time to leave you. And then when you're in the landscape, and you see the critters, there's also the spirits of the past. They might actually be around and bring a message to you.
Talk to them
through that critter. So
talk to the animals. They know what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody thinks they're just dumb animals, but they think we're dumb Indians too. They're no different than us. We're all to be honest with you, there's 3 races, and there's us and the animals.
Yeah.
That's the reality. We'd rather hang out with the critters. They're our friends.
But the critters, sometimes they tell you things. They might point out something to you,
or lead you
a
somewhere.
Direction, or warn you, or tell you something about something that's going on there.
The ravens is thought and memory from Woden. They're your kind of like guardians. Those ravens that are following you around.
Yeah,
That's Woden's thought and memory. You could talk to them too. They're
I
there for
do.
that too.
I do. Yeah, I go up there when I sit. A lot of times they show up. I hear them first. They'll call out, and I go, "Oh, they're here." As soon as I hear them, I usually sit down, and that's where I make the offering.
And
Is
do you
when
ever
I hear
notice
the ravens.
anytime the ravens show up, those silver objects show up too? Did you notice a pattern?
Yes. Yeah. You've been pointing those out to me. In fact, if people go back and watch some of my previous videos on the Carl Crusher channel, that if you search through that, there's a lot of times when there are ravens that show up, and I stop and I go really slow and I pan around, and there's some interesting things
That are
that
with them.
are
They
moving
came with
around
them.
that are not ravens on the camera.
And
That
they always hang out together for some reason. I was noticing that pattern. I've never been able to tell you that until just now, but that was a pattern I was noticing.
And there's been these other patterns as well, with the sacred geometry that I want to talk about, and then really quick about like whenever we make discoveries that have to do with Mount Wilson Ranch and some of the history, suddenly the cameras kick on and we start getting these like orbs in the saloon and up and down in the hallways up at Mount Wilson Ranch when we start working on certain projects. So there's been all kinds of interesting stuff going on
I
there
can
too.
tell you exactly what it is if you want to know.
Yes, please.
Portals, remember I said that white man has two words for the same thing? Portals has another word for it. It's called the entrance to the underworld. They're the same.
Really?
The ancients are hanging out with those UFO people. They're using that same system for some odd reason. I don't know how or why, but that's what I've learned.
Maybe it's the same system whether alive or dead in the past or
Mhm.
future, all that
All those
quantum.
little portals I showed you are just the little local areas where the souls go into when they go into the underworld. That's what I've learned. But then for some odd reason, UFOs and space people are using it to go around the globe with it too as well. But I think that's a long time ago. Our ancient ancestors used to astral travel along those lines too. And that's why I think, but people don't want to believe me, especially like James Keenan, that I believe electromagnetic energy is being carried in the H2O and aquifers that are under the earth going through the entire planet. But nobody wants to believe the Indian.
Well, I believe you because I've accidentally experienced it.
Well, then you know.
Right? I've gone to these sites and experienced that resonance and had it happen to me. These false doorways that become like a magic doorway or an astral doorway.
Hollowness in that cave is a cavern that goes to a subterranean that's full of water. If you went in there, you're going to find water in
Oh,
there.
at Mount Wilson? Yeah. Yeah.
That's the when you get water and you get those electromagnetic waves and they go up against the quartz crystal or piezo, there's your reaction. And that mountain's made out of total quartz crystal. I'm serious. People were coming up from Maya and going up to your neighborhood in Nevada to mine crystal and then go up further north to mine gold. That was the main export from your state where you're at in Nevada and Utah.
So that kind of makes me
Fascinating.
think, imagine what all this fracking is doing to the spaces too. It's definitely messing up spaces if you're replacing
Not only
water with like chemicals.
fracking, taking all the oil out, you take the lubricant out, the plates don't have no more lubricant anymore. They rub against each other. And then I wonder why there's so many fucking volcanoes going on and so many cyclones and so many earthquakes. It's man-made. They took out too much lubricant out of the plates and there's nothing but stone rubbing now. There's no more oil that used to be there. It's stone against stone.
Mm.
But even the pollution of water, as we pollute the groundwater and that spreads, with all those chemicals that you know, that's going to just be around for so many, a
And
long time.
And the other thing that's killing Mother Earth is that they need to take the unnecessary dams down that are just for recreational use. If there's one for flood or energy, that's understandable. But just for boating and all of that recreational nonsense, you need to let the water flow again so that it could go into the aquifers. This place used to be green and lush until the white man turned off the spigot.
Right.
And everything below Colorado dried up, and now everything's drying up altogether, and they can't figure out why. It's them. You
Yeah.
dammed up the rivers and all, and to
We
make
turned it
flood.
off.
And you
Yeah.
turn it off. You turn the spigot back on. Come on, we gotta
Right.
be smarter than that. No, we're just gonna die of stupidity and just die of thirst.
We've also actually even affected the Earth's like rotation, because of the weight of the water and how we've dammed it up in different areas around the world. So it's very interesting how, as man, we've changed the landscape and changed and shifted the world.
And I don't know if the Mayan beliefs were going to take up my suggestions. They were having problems with droughts down there, and I said, "Come on, you guys are supposed to be the smart Maya. Go to one of those cenotes that's not being used or that's going dry. Put a little dam with stones around it so it can divert the water into where the cenote is, where water used to come out. Water can go back in. You start filling up the aquifers, and you raise the water levels." You ain't gonna raise levels just by bitching and complaining about it and then whining with it with a white man. You gotta do something. And I gave him that suggestion. If water came out there, you could put water back in there. If it came out, you could bring the water table back up. And your whole area will be lush and green. It might be the only place lush and green. Everything outside there will be all dry still. But your area, they'll be wondering why you got crops, why you always got fresh water, why your plants are so healthy. Because you have water in your aquifer now. It's not all dried out like the rest of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about this.
How do I get these ideas to somebody? Because that could be used even here.
Right now, we're trying to get the word out piece at a time. This idea of reconnecting and getting back to the source, reconnecting with the earth and our relationship with ourselves and within ourselves. And, uh, and then after that, people, I think, can start taking the steps to awaken to this deeper thing where, you guys are at the edge now where you're doing this whole holographic system of understanding things, looking at these glyphs that just look like most people just say, oh, this is chicken scratches, or oh, this is just some calendar or carving system. And you look at it at face value, but you guys have realized there's something a lot deeper to that. And maybe you can talk about that and I'll show a couple of the photos.
It's a written language that the white man will never admit that we have. And we don't like chicken scratch. We like holographic, three-dimensional things. Chicken scratch is only for the people that are only limited in their vocabulary. Chicken scratch is primitive. Three-dimensional, like you're showing right here. Boy, that's Junior on the bottom, that serpent right there. Hi, Junior. That right here, that's a language, but nobody wants to accept that we had a language. It was a visual language, but it's a language. You take our ancient symbols and you put them all together, it creates that. What everybody thinks is simple, primitive art, but when you put it together, show me any modern man that can produce that. Show me any modern artist that can produce that. There are none. Oh, hey, there's Trump right there on the right side. I can see his profile. Yep, you see almost got your arrows right there. And there's the devil over here. He's getting blown apart over here. You can see his horns and his chin, and he's looking up that way, and his arms against the wall as he's. We got him. The Christians are too weak. They don't have a spiritual backbone or balls to deal with the devil. They are the devil. I mean, you're going to get them to fight themselves? That's being silly. So you have to leave it to us natives to take the devil by the horns, so to speak. Oh, this picture right here. This one right here, you can see the noses that are sticking out. These faces that you could see in the cracks.
Yeah.
There's one there and one over here. These weren't what I was trying to look for. I was trying to look at this guy's face, but all those other people came in to watch me while I was doing the work. I didn't intentionally bring those faces in. Oh, that's Kukulkan in the underworld.
On the bottom.
On the bottom, at the bottom center, he got turquoise jewelry on, and he's in the underworld. You can see the ghost sticking out of the slats out of there. The head's out
On
here.
the left and right.
So he's on the left and the right, and he's in the underworld. He's got some assistants here. He's going to retrieve the bones of man to create a whole new race of man for this next cycle.
Okay,
Right.
and there's other stuff in the folder that I don't want to show, so I'm going to be careful.
Well, we can't
Okay.
build later down the road on other programs but first I need to understand the basics, because it is mind blowing when you first see it. And if not, you know that everybody I shows this to, they see the general things, but for everybody else, they see personal visions. What I'll see, she won't see. What you'll see, she won't see, but you'll see. But I can't see. See what I mean? And it's
Right.
just for you. The general things, yeah, we see, but other people see things that are just meant just for them, which is really weird how it communicates.
There's a really neat one, because you can go circularly too. So if you find an image of Kotlikwe, the one that you have to go up 5 stories to take a picture of that disc, if you get a mirror and you put it over Kotlikwe in the middle and then you turn it in a circle, then you actually see her giving birth. So in that particular image, it's actually her body dismembered, because in the story of her, they cut her up into pieces and threw her body parts all to different parts of the world.
And understanding that she was the mother of the sun.
Wow.
But if you find that image of her, of Kolikwe, the stone disc, and you mirror it and you turn it, she becomes whole again, and then she actually gives birth. She's in the process of giving birth. She bears down, her eyes are open. She closes her eyes, everything. She bears down, she goes into labor, and then a baby comes out from between her legs.
And then she's holding a little baby son in her arms.
Wow.
I tried to tell the Aztecs that are telling their stories in there, but I guess they got too Hispanicized that I'm just a crazy Indian that don't know what I'm talking about. You're not Maya, you're not Mesoamerican. And so I had to grill down on one of them down there to tell them the truth. I'm here because you forgot. What? You're making up stories just like the non-natives are doing. You forgot. What do you mean we forgot? And everything I just told you, I told them, and they didn't know anything that I was showing them either. Right. How do you know all of this? We've been paying attention, and we're not famous as the U2 Aztecans. Everybody runs out and talk to the Mayans. Anybody going to talk to this class up? No. I look too Indian. I look like I don't have a brain in my head. I look stupid. So nobody's going to bother to ask this guy. But who knows? The stupid looking guy.
Right?
Not the guy that's playing Indian on that side of the fence or playing Indian on this side of the fence. I don't have time to play Indian. You know, I'm having a hard time just being native. But if somebody would ask this crazy Indian over here, this is going to be hard to say. Do native people really want their culture back, or are they just plain Indian? There, I said it. Are you serious about really being native, or are you just going to pander to tourists? There, I said it. Are you going to be serious about really being who you are? Or do you want to for the white man, hang around the fort, waiting for handouts? We did it. And what happened to my tribe? Classic went extinct over it. So that's a lesson to you Indians out there. We hung around the fort and wanted handouts, and we went extinct. We caught every disease you can imagine. And now we're not even recognized, or even in the court of law, we don't exist.
Roger says, according to the federal government, he is a figment of your imagination.
Yeah. I'm a figment of your imagination. Woo, woo, woo. I don't really exist. Woo, woo, woo.
Well, I have to get going because it's getting late now.
Yes.
That was what we covered, though.
We definitely need to wrap this up, because I just wanted to touch on some of that. We need to do another follow-up interview and do another cool one where you guys can present all this. And I also want to make everybody aware that you guys are going to be like building up on the website and making some of this educational material available for other people to come and participate in and learn. We even want to do
a workshop right now.
We're going to do workshops,
Yeah.
hopefully at Mount Wilson, and a lot of stuff so that we can help re-indigenize minds and return some of this back
Yes.
to all of us.
I have no problem wanting to teach this to people that are seriously interested in learning it.
Yeah.
And I'm not one of those teachers like the white guy teacher. I'm going to hit you with this, with a rule over your head because you're not paying any attention. I want you to learn at your own pace because I learned from my own experience. Certain people learn at their own speed. Some people, which is weird, kids can pick it up like that. My peers, they fight me tooth and nail because they're too logical, they're too old, and they're too programmed. They can't see it. And then I show it to a 6-year-old, and there's no problem with it.
Yeah.
Somebody my age, you're wrong. You don't know what you're talking. You're a crazy Indian. Come on, get that opinion out of your head and just pay attention. People get mad at me and say I'm pseudoscience without checking my equations and my numbers.
Right.
My numbers are so accurate; they're more accurate than modern man. I mean, let's get serious here. 3.17 is not the right number for pi. How can I believe you if you don't even have pi right? And then you get mad at me that I'm a savage and I don't know how to invent a wheel, and then you don't have your pi right. What does that tell me?
Right.
I mean, I challenge any of you out there with your pi, come up with a global location like I did with my 3.25. Do that with your 3.17.
14.
And I might believe it. I don't know what the hell the number. 3, I just don't know. But prove to me that you can use your pi to find a global location, and I might believe you.
Right.
I know you can't do it.
We're going to have to dig into that. I think we should maybe kind of tease some of your maps and stuff in the system a little bit more and talk about all of that. And maybe
I'll prepare for a whole presentation on the mapping system, and I might even be able to work out some slide presentations so we could just click a button and it'll go into explaining without
Let's do it.
Waving my arms and you, and then we click a button and it'll show it in a nice presentation. I have Colleen help me put it together with a slide presentation for things that we want to show as examples or to make a point.
I think that would be amazing. Let's do it. So let's plan on a part 2. You guys, Colleen and Roger, thank you so much. Anything that you would like to leave us with, Colleen?
Go ahead,
Roger.
ladies.
You too.
I don't know. I was just here to speak up every now and then. I'm just the editor and the supporter. I'm a student.
Trying to downplay it. Colleen's a genius. She knows so much about this stuff historically. She's like a whole library of knowledge.
She's not my editor. She's my teacher. I hand over my paper and I get it back with all kind of red marks all over it. She is my teacher.
Oh, I am a teacher.
Girl, that's a typo. Yes. That's a run-on. No, that's my paper's all red. She pretends to be just an editor. No. She has much knowledge as I have. I taught her.
I learned all
my
this.
My woman back here, Tracy's got much of knowledge. As a matter of fact, we need to get her included too. Yeah. She's my intuitive side. She's the one that tells me intuitively which direction I should go. So we need to get her. Don't have to pay her. Just get her to be with me when I'm doing the workshops.
Yeah.
My intuition. She's my other half, really.
Yeah, and I think what Roger, because when I first met Roger, right before I met Roger, I was struck by lightning. I was literally struck by lightning.
That you're singing a lightning song.
And and there were some plants that reacted to us, and the whole bush moved, and all the flowers pointed their head at us, and the flower drooped down and stuck its head right in front of me, and there was no wind.
She got all freaked out because I saw the pretty ladies that were flowers. I do this to them all the time. You're looking pretty today, ladies. And then the lady flowers turned around and blushed and smiled and looked at me and looked at us. It blew her mind. I went, what's the matter? Those plants turned around and are looking at us. I talk to them all the time.
I've never seen anything like it.
I do it all
There
the
are
time.
things that happen around Roger that I've never experienced before.
I was playing guitar at my house on Harvard, and she came by and I didn't know it. Oh, you tell the story.
Yeah, I was waiting. I didn't want to interrupt him because he was playing really good music. And a big giant bubble about that big.
An orb.
It just floated by, and I thought somebody was blowing bubbles, and I looked down the street, there's nobody. Looked down the other side, nobody. And it just hung out right there. It didn't pop, it didn't do anything, it just hung out there. and I sat there on the porch waiting
It
for him
came up to the
finish.
doorway.
And then it just floated off into the sky, and it was just a big clear sphere that was right there. You could see right through it, and I've never seen anything like that before or since.
That's why I said I play guitar in that saloon. Oh boy.
I know I need to go back up to Mount Wilson and follow all that advice and leave the right offerings and the coffee and tobacco, the cigarettes and everything out.
And don't forget to put the video camera on it after you do that and see what the reaction is.
Right.
But Roger and Tracy, with the mapping of time on the sacred calendar, they've gone back about 10,000 years into the past.
Tracy went back 10,000 years. She's the calendar keeper. I taught her how to do calendar. I learned how to delegate authority because there's only one of me. So I taught different people different things, and then I could focus on doing the research, and then they continue the calendar keeping. She continues what she's doing with the ancient art and with the calendar, and then I can continue doing work with the vortexes and all that stuff, so I can continue the research. And then they pick up where I left off, and they go off in their own directions.
Right.
So Tracy's been doing calendar keeping, for about 16 years now.
Yeah.
She's the one that went 10,000 years into the past and 10,000 years into the future on the calendar.
And then I think a couple of months ago, we actually went to the beginning of the Codex Tellurianus Romensis, and we just looked it up to compare it to the chart, and we were actually spot on accurate with the very first page and the very first glyph of the Codex Tellurianus Romensis, which was kind of a nice validation because we didn't use it.
Yeah, we're doing it independently.
For our starting point. We actually Roger reverse engineered it. And so it fit perfectly. And
from the Aztec writing from the 1500s, it matched the same year date.
From the first year.
So you go to that Telluriano and you go on and you put those numbers on it. It's a history book. It gives you dates.
That's what blew my mind is how Mount Wilson and stuff like that lined up when you went back far enough. You had to go prehistoric way back, and all of a sudden everything matched.
Right.
Stuff like that blows my mind.
There's like Aztec people who are really into this knowledge, and they're like, I don't know how you did it, but your year is correct. You're right on. And we didn't ask anybody outside of ourselves. Roger didn't.
Well, all I did was observe, like she just said, when the Pleiades was directly overhead, when the Venus was directly below, and there was a certain cycle when that only happens, and then it turned out to be in November 13th of 1986.
Wow.
And we have found correlations. I don't know if you've watched that interview with Roland Begay, the president of the Navajo Nation Medicine Man Association.
Did you put it on the Google Drive?
I did.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So there's associations even with Navajo culture on that.
He's on that thing. He mentions that they knew what woolly mammoths were, and that there was another species of an elephant that they also knew about that had 4 tusks. And I
have 4?
He was talking about a mastodon that's older than a woolly mammoth. Mastodons had 4 tusks, and they were earlier than the woolly mammoth, and they remember that.
That's so cool.
So the correlations to the timekeeping between different peoples and tribes, that's one of the reasons why I interviewed him, was to get some information about that. And so it was really surprising and validating to see that the information that we had is correct. And even he was very interested in the cycles, knowing the moon cycles, and the math of it, because Roger has that down in his head.
And I was hitting the same numbers that he knew in the Dene tradition, and I knew the numbers in my research, and that was really freaking him out, even to the world ages of the 5 worlds before this. But I went a step further. I had the years of when those ages ended and started, which he didn't have. And
could that actually point to where everybody's been wrong with some of the prophecies and future predictions as well?
As long as the white man's using 12, they're always going to be wrong.
Right. And we should save all that for our next interview, because that is a whole other topic.
We're trying to get you on Indian time. That's what this is all about.
Right?
Not manana, Indian time.
Everybody's got to re-indigenize. I agree.
We got to put a 13-hour clock up there.
That'd be cool.
So with that 13 frequency pattern mapping with the planets and the stars, when you map out Mercury, it all occurs in an orderly fashion. The day names might be different, but the numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Then it starts over again. The same for the year count for Earth. That's how it goes. 1 Reed, 2 Flint, Reed, Flint, House, Rabbit, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down to 13, up to 52 years.
And 9 for Mercury stands for the frequency that it's vibrating at. 45 for Venus is at the frequency that it's vibrating at. 28 is for the frequency that Earth is vibrating at. 60 is the frequency that Mars is vibrating at. If 28 goes to any others these places, they're going to be affected because it's not the same 28 as this they came from. So if you go to 60 or you go to a lower one, either you're going to age real fast or something else worse is going to happen because you're not the same frequency.
Right.
So the patterns of the planets, you can actually physically see them when you map out the year counts for all the planets, and they all occur in an orderly fashion, which is just mind-blowing, because then it's like, wow, did someone just like place these planets exactly where they need to be?
Yeah, creator.
That's kind of, and then seeing it also, it's in the 260-day calendar, in that one piece of paper that you can use for all time, not only to plant and harvest, but also to do family planning, because 260 days is the incubation period of a human child in utero.
That 260-day calendar tells me that nothing has changed except man and in our man-made time. The infinity calendar has never been broken or been adjusted for any reason since time began. Only man changes their man-made time.
Right.
Nothing in the natural law has changed in the least bit.
Right.
Only man has changed time in their little monkey brain.
It's wild.
Right. So I don't know. Realigning, re-indigenizing mind. It's about minds. It's
and
about
realigning your mind.
Realigning to natural time and understanding, our place in the universe, in the cosmos. It's a completely different mindset than Western world. It's just completely different. It's unique, indigenous.
The other 3 races have lost their place within the universe, and that's why the world's out of balance.
Yeah. I love it, you guys. I think it's such a powerful message, and we need to keep sharing it. And I do definitely want to do this again. I appreciate your time. We've been going almost 2.5 hours.
Oh my God. I think, how are you going to edit that all down?
I'm not. I'm going to take only just like a couple little bits where we had technical difficulties out. And other than that, I think it's going to blow people's minds. And it's a message that everybody needs to hear. So thank you guys so much.
If you did an editing mainstream and it was 2.5 hours, tonight's show is a 2.5 hour show, but we edited it and now it's 2 minutes and 50 seconds long.
I'm not only for TikTok and Instagram, but the rest of them.
Thanks, Carl, for allowing us to have a little time to speak as Native people, because this is one of the first time us Native people actually got to speak to the non-Natives out there. And it's the first step for us Natives to actually make a communication with the non-Natives out there. Like I said, we're getting tired of Indian experts talking to other Indian experts and not talking to us. And that's why we're talking directly to you now, because we're tired of being ignored. We do exist. We do have a brain. We do have a mouth. We do know how to talk. Talk to us.
It's an honor. I mean, it's been a huge privilege and an honor and a massive education trying to learn everything. And I want to keep going. So let's do it. You guys, thanks so much.
This is in 79. You got a long way to go.
Right. All right, Colleen, I'll let you go back to your family, and Roger, and you guys have a good night, okay?
Thank everybody out there for listening to this crazy Indian.
Thank you.
If you get anything out of it, I'll feel good.
All right. Have a good night.